Look, kid, I get it if you feel some type of way about me. But whether I did it or not, it don't matter. But if you want to come and see me about it someday, I'll understand.
Now, in today's breakdown, we're going to be taking a look at a potential new threat that might be coming Tommy Egan's way and possibly even Tariq. Once he deals with all of the issues that he's got in the world of Force in Chicago, and he sure does have a lot of them, he has a lot to deal with in this final episode for Force, which in my opinion will also leave us on some sort of cliffhangers going into the next Power show. And one of those cliffhangers may even be a new threat that keeps Tommy and Tariq together. Just like Ghost once said, you deal with one problem, another one just seems to pop up. Circle of life. And to start with, I just want to read you guys a quote from Gary Lennon that will just make you guys think about an old threat that could potentially return. And this is the quote. Tommy's past will catch up with him one way or another. In the Power universe, we really love the idea of dropping breadcrumbs in shows and then having that breadcrumb arise to lead to a bigger storyline in one of our other shows. I love the actors that we've worked with, and I like bringing them back and giving them something to do in sort of a very surprising yet inevitable turn. So yes, you will see familiar faces at times. So Tommy's past will catch up with him one way or another, whether it's in Power Book 4 Force or in the future, and we definitely will be referring back to this quote a bit later on. But just wanted to bring that to your attention just before we kickstart the breakdown, where we're going to be taking a look at his current problems, how he could have a problem with Madame Mu and the Chinese, the Italians who were mentioned way back in episode 1. Could they pop up and reignite an old feud dating back to Power? That's the topic of discussion in today's video, for the final episode of Power Book 4 Force, and potentially even beyond. Now, in terms of Tommy's current problems, Tommy is someone who's been pulled in a million different directions, especially over these past 2 episodes. War has been brewing in the background, and with what Tommy's been dealing with, this man hasn't even had time to grieve the loss of his brother. Just have a think about that for a moment, which definitely is sometimes us in real life. When we lose loved ones, we have to deal with funeral arrangements, look after family, kids, as well as maybe juggle businesses and just general life. With Tommy in Force, he's just lost JP, but he's been dealing with so many issues from the feds to the streets with everybody wanting a piece of Tommy. He hasn't even been able to process the fact that he's lost yet another brother. He was quickly thinking about getting revenge on Jannard and CBI, which will continue into episode 10. He'll have eyes on avenging JP's death. He still needs to keep his business ticking under Che, which he did manage to do with the help of Shanti in episode 9. But he's still got enemies like Roberto Ortega and the Marquez cartel. He still wants Tommy dead, and I do assume at some point in episode 10, he definitely will be making his move as well. There's Bobby DeFranco and law enforcement. I don't think he's going to let up on his quest to get justice for Stacey Marks. Vic Flynn is still in the background, lurking like a cockroach. And who knows who he's creating an alliance with? Is it Jannard? Is it someone else? Is it someone new? Or maybe even an old threat that we haven't even considered? Maria seems like she wants to book a one-way ticket to Mexico, and that's another problem, keeping his family safe in the middle of a war. You then have D-Mac going rogue in episode 9, and then he came back with the information that he's just killed Marshall. Where Tommy's reaction was, "You did what?" No doubt he'll definitely have that conversation around D-Mac killing Marshall at some point in the future. But just have a look at all the issues that we've just been through. Those are just relating to Tommy. It's crazy to think how much Tommy's dealing with going into episode 10 so soon after JP's death. He hasn't even put his brother to rest. We still need to see the funeral and see him bury JP, where we may even see a red funeral, which may even lead to the loss of more loved ones. But the problems won't end here. It definitely doesn't work like that in Power. Even if Tommy is somehow able to come out unscathed, even if Tommy is able to deal with most of these problems, which I think he can, there definitely will be more. And one of them could very well be Madame Wu and the Chinese. Now, these guys were introduced way back in episode 2 when D-Mac and Marshall made the plan to rob their gambling spot, where they did also take a brick worth 20 grand. Fast forward to 306, we saw Jannard and Diamond being introduced to Madame Wu through Manny Fresh, where they did make a deal to run fentanyl for the Chinese. However, after episode 9, Diamond is now dead, and Jannard is about to be taken off the chessboard as well, or at least he should be. I would be very shocked, very shocked indeed if he did survive. But who knows, in the world of Power, I don't think any of us can say for 100% certainty that he will be taken off the chessboard. But irrespective of whether he is or isn't, we know he's not fit to lead. But once Tommy deals with the rest of CBI, what happens to the fentanyl deal that they agreed with the Chinese? Are they a group that are just going to shrug their shoulders and carry on with business as usual? Or will they want someone to pay for taking out one of their pipelines in Chicago? Let's remember, Manny Fresh did vouch for the CBI, so is she someone who the Chinese kill in episode 10? So that's a small death predictions for episode 10, Manny Fresh at the hands of the Chinese. But having said that, Just when Tommy deals with all of those issues that we just spoke about, will Madame Wu and her people be a problem? Possibly, maybe. It definitely is possible. It would be a new kind of threat that we've never seen before in Power, and a new threat that would kind of prove to be a bit of a fresh angle. The only thing with that is we know the next chapter of Power won't be in Chicago. That's one of the major plot points we do need to keep in mind for what comes after Power Book 4 Force in terms of new threats. It possibly may not be linked to Chicago. It's not to say there won't be ties in Chicago that could play a role a bit later on, because I do think there will be. I think Gary Lennon has already teased that he's going to be leaving some threads open that he could bring into the world of Power in the future. But the next Power show will not be in Chicago. Now, I personally do think they go back to New York. We can't not have Power and not hear a big rich town. There are obviously issues in going back to New York, because there's the whole scenario of Tommy being dead in the Big Apple, which I do think they will find a workaround. But the reason why I say New York is because there's still a lingering threat that ties to both Tommy and Tariq, and that's the Italians.
Yeah, me too. Well, I got the Italians on lock. I'm handling our business.
Now, the Italians were mentioned way back in episode 301, and referring back to Gary Lennon's quote, he did mention they do like to drop breadcrumbs. So, was that a breadcrumb they left early doors? Which isn't the only time they were mentioned in recent times.
She's providing guns for the Italians in the Lower East now.
Now, it definitely has been a while since we've seen Power Book 2 Ghost, so many may have forgotten, but they were also mentioned right towards the end of Ghost Season 4. They were mentioned in conversation between Drew and Detective Don Carter. However, on both occasions they failed to dive deeper on the Italians. We never saw them in Power Book 2 Ghost, and we haven't seen them in Power Book 4 Force yet. But they are definitely still a lingering threat in the world of Power, and it definitely is a topic we've spoken about many times on this channel over the past couple of years. Tommy and Tariq's Italian problem. Now, this is where we're going to take it back to Power Season 6, Episode 13, an episode which I would encourage you guys to rewatch if you do find the time. This is an episode where I do feel like they left a lot of clues which were hidden for Elisa Marie and the Italian Mafia's eventual return. After the death of Proctor, Elisa Marie did move in with Aunt Dolores, Benny's sister.
Strength is why women in families like ours are the ones who survive.
Now, Aunt Dolores began to mentor Elisa Marie, teaching her how she had to be strong, because women are often the backbones of a lot of families, which is something I definitely agree with. She also warned Elisa Marie that Tariq wasn't her friend, because as they dug into the recording that Proctor left as a failsafe, she could see straight through Tariq's bullshit and lies. Now, in Tariq's nightmare, Joe Proctor mentioned that he made Elisa Marie an orphan, but she does have some family left, and they aren't just any ordinary family. Carlo Civello is Elisa Marie's great uncle and also the head of the Civello mob. And I do think Tommy's reaction when he kidnapped Elisa Marie gave it away in terms of just how powerful and dangerous they may actually be. Now, Tommy is a character who's never afraid to go toe-to-toe with anyone. We've seen what he's done in Power, even going up against Vincent Ragney and the Ragney crime family. We've seen what he's done in Chicago with the Flynns when he came in Season 1, and this season alone in terms of all his problems. But the fact that Tommy's thinking, oh shit, I think that tells us the Civello mob aren't a family you want to be messing with. The Italian crime family do run mega deep, and it is also definitely embedded into the history of New York and also America in general. Over the past year or so, we've gone through the history of the Italian crime families and the Italian crime syndicate. There's definitely been a few references in Raising Kanan as well. I've enjoyed talking about it throughout Raising Kanan. We also know Tommy has ties with Tony Teresi being Italian, so the history is here and it definitely does run deep. Now, while Elisa Marie was with Tommy, we did also learn a bit more backstory. They both felt neglected by their mothers. Both of their mothers were also junkies, and Tommy could definitely relate to a lot of the pain that Elisa Marie had gone through. The look on Tommy's face as Elisa Marie told her about her backstory definitely spoke 1,000 words. As I've said many times before, silence often does speak louder than words, and this sure was one of those moments.
No, he's gone. Just like everyone else I've ever loved. I'm all alone in this world.
This is something else Tommy is all too familiar with, losing people that he loves, and he knows all too well the more you lose, the more numb you become. Just have a look at his reaction to JP's death. No doubt it did hurt him and he is hurting inside, but he's lost so much he's now become accustomed to the pain. And the same goes for Elisa Marie. As a kid, she's lost so much at a very young age, from both her parents to Uncle Benny, and now she's being raised by a tough auntie in Aunt Dolores, with ties to Uncle Carlo and the Civello mob. So who do you guys think Elisa Marie is going to grow up and become now that she's 19 years old? Who is she going to grow up to become under Aunt Dolores and under her Italian crime family? And who is she going to blame for her father's death? It definitely is something we have to think about when it comes to the future of Elisa Marie. Now later on, Elisa Marie did also learn Tariq did lie to her as well as knowing it was Tommy who pulled the trigger on her father. And it is the conversation with Tommy I do think we need to pay close attention to, especially right at the end.
But if you want to come and see me about it someday, I'll understand.
As Tommy came back to visit Elisa Marie to get back the recording, he did mention that he would understand if she did come back and see him about Proctor's death one day. And I do think this conversation is worth revisiting from time to time. Whenever someone says what Tommy said, you better believe they will be coming back to have that conversation. Aunt Dolores, the Civello mob, or Elisa Marie will return at some point in the future. But just as I mentioned a second ago, let's not forget who also played a huge role in Proctor's death. That's Tariq St. Patrick.
You're surprised? After you left the back door to your apartment open for dear old Uncle Tommy, my blood's on you too.
Now, it was a bit too late in the story for them to introduce the Italian threat in Power Book 2 Ghost, and I do think the same could be said about here in Power Book 4 Force. They need to close off so many chapters, but make no mistake, they definitely also will be leaving some open just to keep us intrigued going into the next Power show. And I just can't help but think, with Gary Lennon mentioning Tommy's past will catch up with him, it may just be time to revisit Tommy's old Italian friends. Right towards the end, when Tommy's dealt with every single problem that he needs to deal with in Chicago, just when he thinks he's finally got a moment to breathe and maybe even go to Barcelona for a weekend with Maria, in comes the new big bad, the Circle of Life, just like Ghost mentioned in conversation with Kanan. What if towards the end of Power Book 4 Force the Italian Mafia do enter, and that's the story that keeps Tommy and Tariq together, which then branches off into Power Legacy. With Tariq, I do also feel like Elisa Marie may want to come back and have that conversation with him as well, because just like Proctor said in his nightmare, he was the one who left the back door open for Tommy. So if Tommy and Tariq are together in episode 10, I do think it's the perfect opportunity for them to bring in the threat of the Italians, where Tommy and Tariq have to deal with them together, maybe even with the help of D-Mac. They were both behind what happened to Joe Proctor, more so Tommy, but Tariq did also lie to Elisa Marie and left the back door open, and again, that is something that can't be overlooked. Time definitely flies in the world of Power, as we've learned from how Tariq has grown up from a young kid to where he is now, and Elisa Marie certainly isn't this little girl that we saw back in Season 6 Episode 13. The actress is now 19, and with them now also teasing Tommy's endgame, I keep telling you guys, she is one to watch. With that being said, hopefully that sparks something in your guys' minds with new threats, with where they could take the world of Power post Power Book 4 Force. I do think a new threat will emerge, but I do still maintain one of Tommy Egan's current biggest threats at this moment in time is also law enforcement, Bobby DeFranco, which we will come to in the next day or two. But the floor is now yours. Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.